In this first module in politics, we review Philosophy Man and discuss the relationship of the church to politics. As a review, let's go through the components of Philosophy Man. They compose a hierarchy of facts, which means as we discuss any higher branch, such as politics, we can't neglect or forget about the dependent parts from lower branches already in place. It all starts with the axioms: existence, consciousness, and identity. These are the self-evident facts upon which all other knowledge depend. The axioms are irreducible, inescapable, and invincible. They are present in every word you utter, every thought you think, or action you take. Metaphysics are the self-existing facts of reality. In the previous course, we discussed the various ontological frameworks and aligned ourselves with the primacy of existence or God inside the box. Epistemology deals with discovered facts. These are the descriptive truths of what is via the correspondence definition of truth. The correspondence definition of truth is defined in Doctrine and Covenants 93:24, which describes truth as the correspondence of thought or knowledge with reality. Ethics deals with pursued facts. These are prescriptive truths telling us what we ought to do according to our values. By knowing and valuing what is good, we know what actions are right. All philosophical branches from ethics and above are colored as to how they relate to me personally. Neutral to me, yellow. Against me, red. For me, green. Politics deals with protected facts pertaining to rights, justice, and the interactions between people. Co-equal with politics is aesthetics, which deals with celebrated facts. These facts display our sense of life and the values we celebrate. The conceptual nature of man, represented by the head on Philosophy Man, is what makes these 5 philosophical branches available to us. Politics is defined as the total complex of relations between people living in society. Mortimer Adler said,
"In discussing the philosophical branch of politics, we focus on the ideas we act on in governing our social, political, and economic affairs."
Ayn Rand said,
"The answers given by ethics determine how man should treat other men, and this determines the 4th branch of philosophy, politics, which defines the principles of a proper social system."
Is it okay to bring up politics in a church setting such as sacrament meeting, Sunday school, elders' quorum, or relief society? George Orwell said,
"In our age, there is no such thing as keeping out of politics."
Is Orwell correct? Can we avoid politics altogether? We are all deeply affected by the politics that surround us. We either get involved or are at the mercy of others who are involved. The church has directed us to take a 3-tier approach to politics in our church meetings. Elder Oaks said we should learn and advocate the inspired principles of the Constitution. We also insist, and we ask our local leaders to insist, that political choices and affiliations not be the subject of teachings or advocacy in any of our church meetings. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints will, of course, exercise its right to endorse or oppose specific legislative proposals that we believe will impact the free exercise of religion or the essential interests of church organizations. On contested issues, we should seek to moderate and unify. When and for what should we advocate, and for what should we not advocate? On contested political issues, how do we go about the process of unifying? A quick way of relating to the church's position on politics is to think in the metaphor of a traffic stoplight. A red stoplight is for steering clear of all partisan politics in church, which consists of advocating for specific parties, specific platforms, and specific candidates. A yellow caution light consists of carefully discussing moral political issues that directly affect the interests of the church, where church leaders have explicitly commented, such as marriage between a man and a woman, abortion, and specific legislation affecting religious liberty. A green go light is for openly advocating for general principles of the proper role of government. This means engaging thoughtfully with others on political philosophy. With Latter-day Saint scriptures and general authority talks full of political declarations, political neutrality cannot possibly mean anything more than steering clear of partisan politics, the red stoplight, or else we Latter-day Saints end up throwing the political baby out with the partisan bathwater. The dirty bathwater the church wants to avoid is the red, the desirable baby is the yellow and green. The official statement from the church on partisan politics says,
"The church's mission is to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, not to elect politicians. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is neutral in matters of party politics. This applies in all of the many nations in which it is established. It is customary for the Church at each national election to issue a letter to be read to all congregations encouraging its members to vote, but emphasizing the Church's neutrality in partisan political matters.
When it comes to specific political parties, platforms, and candidates, political neutrality is the Church's officially stated position. The Church is not politically neutral in all political matters or moral issues. Can you think of examples when the Church does get involved in partisan politics? The Church's official stance on abortion and same-sex marriage are well-known examples of the Church addressing moral issues which double as hotly debated political issues.
The Church does reserve the right as an institution to address, in a nonpartisan way, issues that it believes have significant community or moral consequences, or that directly affect the interests of the Church.
Why are moral policy discussions in cautionary yellow? Because the minute you bring up the policy, it infers a political party. That is why these are cautionary yellow. On political moral policy discussions, slow down and be careful. Steer the conversation away from the party and stick to the policy. Perhaps many among us misunderstood what it means about not talking politics in church, so we incorrectly avoid all discussion whatsoever. The third, green light, position on talking politics in church is often little understood by most members. It too is mentioned in the same official news release, mentioning modern scriptural references to the role of government, doctrine, and covenants, section 134. Our scriptural 12th article of faith also falls under the topic of relationships with government.
We believe in being subject to kings, presidents, rulers, and magistrates, in obeying, honoring, and sustaining the law.
Surely sustaining means actively participating in the political process, not passively observing. With regard to being subject to political authority, it is a mistake to take Article of Faith 12 in an absolute sense, while ignoring the larger context. Doctrine and Covenants 134:5 says,
We believe that all men are bound to sustain and uphold the respective governments in which they reside, while protected in their inherent and inalienable rights by the laws of such governments.
The qualifying phrase, while protected in their inherent and inalienable rights, is a key contextual issue for being subject to political authority. We support kings, presidents, rulers, and the law only to the degree they are not violating individual natural rights. Surely we are not being told to befriend tyrants who trample on individual rights. The threefold position of the Church regarding discussing politics disguises a deeper and contentious problem, though. Political neutrality seems relatively innocent until one realizes that all of this political talk actually means something in real practice. Does the Book of Mormon teach general political principles? Does the Book of Mormon take sides with specific political parties? As an example, let's consider from the Book of Mormon, Alma 51, 1-9, as it relates to politics. It describes two specific partisan political parties, the freemen and the kingmen.
Those kingmen who desired to overthrow a free government while seeking power and authority over the people, and those freemen who had sworn to maintain the rights and privileges of a free government.
From a red light partisan politics perspective, the Freeman Party had a platform of political liberty, religious freedom, and free markets, whereas the Kingman Party had a platform of elitism, authoritarianism, and economic favoritism.
Therefore there arose a warm dispute concerning the matter, but not unto bloodshed. This matter of their contention was settled by the voice of the people.
Now, consider the yellow caution light of specific political policy associated with each political party. To be settled by the voice of the people was whether voluntary-based free offerings should support priests and teachers, or whether compulsory taxes should force elitism, priestcraft, and indoctrination.
And it came to pass that the voice of the people came in favor of the freemen and the people of liberty.
The general question they dealt with then was between a representative republic via elected judges or a monarchy with titles of nobility under kings. The Book of Mormon says that the voice of the people voted in favor of the freemen. So, in a church setting in our day, as a practical way of avoiding contention, all church members can talk about the political philosophy. Church leaders can preach on political policy, and neither members nor leaders can talk about specific political parties. But there's a deeper problem as to why there is no such thing as keeping out of politics. Once you begin to discuss political philosophy, the proper role of government, and the relationship between the government and the governed, you are already deep into the thick of political things. It just doesn't take a genius to connect the dots in both directions, forward and backward, in a logical connection showing what voice of the people means. There is a simple logical connection between one's political philosophy, moral political policy, and political party. People quickly learn to connect the dots between philosophy, policy, and party. That partisan politics matter and cannot simply be ignored as an everyone wins scenario is self-evident. In the case of the Freemen and Kingmen political parties, they were not simply engaged in an interesting political philosophy debate, but were in a life and death struggle between liberty and tyranny. If tyranny wins, then liberty loses. Likewise, if freedom wins, then authoritarianism loses. A lot is at stake even now. Political philosophy has primacy in politics. We always start there and expect people to connect the dots for themselves. But many faithful and well-meaning Latter-day Saints have come to believe that in a church setting, it is highly inappropriate to discuss any form of politics, such as the Founding Fathers, the Declaration of Independence, or the United States Constitution. Some believe the political nature of this discussion would detract from the spiritual nature of our church meetings. This reluctance comes despite the numerous articles and conference talks given by general authorities on the subject of the divine origin of the Constitution. While it is clear that general authorities are free to openly talk and make reference to the Constitution, the average church member is often hesitant as to whether or not it is appropriate to even bring it up. Joseph Smith regarded the Constitution as possessing truth comparable to that of sacred Scripture.
We say that God is true, that the Constitution of the United States is true, that the Bible is true, and that the Book of Mormon is true, and that Christ is true.
Either the Constitution is a divinely inspired document, or it isn't. If the Constitution isn't divinely inspired, then we Latter-day Saints should stop treating it as if it is, and we should keep such political topics entirely outside of a church discussion setting. If the Constitution is divinely inspired, then we Latter-day Saints should stop treating it as if it isn't, and it would be highly inappropriate not to bring it up. But the question is, can we show the Constitution to be divinely inspired? Not from a sentimental, nationalistic, or patriotic position, but from a doctrinal and scriptural position? There is a universal religious test we can apply to any question in order to put an end to the debate and know with certainty whether the topic is appropriate to bring up in a church setting. What do you think this universal test is? Can the topic be tied directly to Christ? If the topic can be tied directly to Jesus Christ, then it clears the bar and is deemed universally appropriate, and we should feel perfectly comfortable in discussing it in any church setting. But if the intended topic cannot be tied directly to Jesus Christ, then it fails to meet the standard or clear the bar and ought not to be shared in a church setting. In other words, never share a message in church without it being tied directly to Jesus Christ. When it comes to gospel topics or messages that we are all familiar with, such as faith, the scriptures, or prophets, it is quite easy to pass this test and meet this standard by clearing the bar. But what about the Constitution? Can it also be doctrinally and scripturally tied directly to Jesus Christ? In one scripture verse alone, we can tie directly to Christ not only the Constitution, but also the Founding Fathers and the Revolutionary War. Doctrine and Covenants, 101 verse 80, is very specific and direct. In it, Christ says,
"And for this purpose have I established the constitution of this land, by the hands of wise men whom I raised up unto this very purpose, and redeemed the land by the shedding of blood."
Jesus Christ, then, is the ultimate founding father and ought to be recognized as such if we are to fully appreciate the divinely inspired nature of the Constitution. Also notice that we can directly tie the Founding Fathers to Christ. It has become popular in some political ideologies to attempt to cancel the Founders and their contribution to political ideals. We should not be embarrassed by the Founding Fathers, nor sympathetic to those who desire an unsavory revisionist history designed to tear them down. The Founders obviously were not perfect men, but according to this scriptural verse, Christ claims he raised them up for a specific purpose. Notice also that the American Revolutionary War and consequently the Declaration of Independence are tied directly to Jesus Christ as well. Christ claims the land was redeemed by design, through war, or the shedding of blood, demonstrating that mankind is justified in fighting for our inherent natural rights. In summary, when we say politics, we simply mean the interaction between two or more people, based on our doctrine and covenants, discussing the Revolutionary War, the Founding Fathers, and the principles embodied in America's founding documents in any setting, clears the bar of being tied directly to Christ. If we ignore the principles found in the Constitution or are embarrassed by discussing it, we put our own liberty and religious freedom at risk. When we talk about the traffic light model, we are talking about the application of discussing politics in a church setting. Everyone should know at this point what is appropriate and not appropriate discussing in a church setting. Partisan politics is a red stoplight. Specific moral political issues are a yellow light. Proceed with caution. Political philosophy regarding the proper role of government is a green light to openly discuss. The rest of these politics modules will also follow this pattern. In these modules, we will not discuss particular parties, platforms, or candidates. Instead, we will focus on analyzing the various contrasting political philosophies and attempt to come to a conclusion as to what specific general political principles we Latter-day Saints are doctrinally committed to.
Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to the Christian Eternalism YouTube channel and visit christianeternalism.org